What's going on, everybody? Welcome back to Talkin Sports with Jake. Hope you're all doing well. Let's start off with the Stanley Cup final game from last night. Oilers win a crazy game, come all the way back, down 3-0, win 5-4 in overtime. These four games have gone to overtime. It's been an incredible series. Similar to what we got last year, probably even better. Florida was up 3-0 last year. Edmonton came all the way back, and then Florida ended up winning Game 7. This year, it's been absolutely incredible, back and forth. Oilers win 5-4 in overtime as the series is now tied at 2 games apiece. Florida dominated the first period. We're up 3-0. We're out shooting them to like 17-8 or something like that, or 17-6. It was absolute domination. Second period, Oilers pull Stuart Skinner. They go back to Calvin Pickard. Pickard and Skinner were split for the most part in the regular season, with Pickard getting slightly more starts than Skinner. Pickard was to start heading into the postseason. He gets hurt. Skinner takes over. Skinner was playing really well, so they just kind of rode with him, but has not been great in this series. Has not been all on him for sure. Edmonton's had a lot of trouble staying out of the box. They took, I think, 11 penalties in Game 3 when they got blown out, and then they took a bunch last time as well, especially in that first period. And, in front of them, they weren't great. So it wasn't all on him, but still, numbers weren't great. Results weren't great. They went to Calvin Pickard in the second period, and he played very well for them. He held Florida in check, and allowed Edmonton to get back in that game. They had that big second period. They ended up tying it. Edmonton scores a few minutes left in the third to go up 4-3, and then Reinhart on the rebound with 19 seconds left to send to overtime, and then Oilers win in overtime. So kind of a tough goal if you're Florida, kind of going off the defender there. But big win for Edmonton, obviously. I think Calvin Pickard has to start the rest of the series, at least in Game 5. Skinner hasn't been horrible in this series by any means. Despite what the numbers say, he's given up a lot of goals, but a lot of it has not been on him. And he has been playing really well. However, Pickard got them here for the most part. He used to start the playoffs. He played very well last night. I know, you don't like going back and forth between goalies in the postseason, but I think Calvin Pickard gives you the best chance to win. So I would ride with him. Members of the team that, you're able to win Game 1. You win a crazy Game 1 back and forth. You come from behind, win in overtime. Game 2, Florida was the better team. You lose in double overtime. You get just annihilated in Game 3. Game 4, you go down big early, and then you the crazy comeback to win. They've had so many come from behind wins in this postseason run. Dating back to last year's postseason run too, they've had so many come from behind wins in these last 2 playoffs, and they're obviously a great team. For what each team has to do to win the series, if you're Florida, you have to keep your foot on the gas. If not, you gotta be by at least 4 or 5 goals against this team. This Edmonton team is relentless. They are relentless offensively. You have the 2 best players in the sport, and Connor McDavid and Leon Draisaitl. You have other pieces there as well. Corey Perry, even at 40, is still a very good player. Future Hall of Famer for sure. Kasperi Kapanen and Evander Kane. Ryan Nugent-Hopkins is a great player. So they have a lot of pieces there. You have some solid pieces on the back end with Darnell Nurse and Matthias Ekholm. You have to keep your foot on the gas. Their goaltending isn't the best, with Stuart Skinner and Calvin Pickard. So keep your foot on the gas. You're built to win championships. There's a reason you're in your 3rd straight cup final. There's a reason you're 2 wins away from your 2nd straight cup final win. This is another relentless team offensively. I mean, how many top-tier offensive players do they have? Alex Barkov and just Matthew Tkachuk. Sam Bennett is a really good 2-way player. And to have so many pieces, on the back end of Gustav Forsling and Aaron Ekblad, and just they have a great goalie in Sergei Bobrovsky, one of the best coaches, one of the best coaches ever in NHL history, and Paul Maurice. Just this team is built to win Stanley Cups, and there's a reason. Like I said, there's a reason they're in their 3rd straight cup final and have a chance to win their 2nd straight championship. So, but you gotta keep your foot on the gas. I know after the first period you're up 3-0, you're out shooting them 17-6, whatever it was. You're dominating. You're up 2-1. You won 6-1 the previous game. You're closing on going up 3-1. Going back to Edmonton, you'll be in a great spot, but the game was not over. And kudos to Edmonton and Chris Knoblauch for making the adjustment, pulling the net minor, saying whenever he said him in the locker room, and obviously it ended up working out. But you got to keep your foot on the gas, because Game 1 you probably should have won, and you didn't. You win game 2 in double overtime. Obviously, you easily win game 3. Then obviously you blow this one. Don't want to say blow. That's kind of a tough word. Edmonton's, there's a lot of credit, all the credit in the world, but still, Florida, you're up 3-0, dominating like that. Cup final, chance to go up 3 games to 1. You got to finish the job at the same time. And if you're Edmonton, you got to stay out of the box. You have to stay out of the box. It's been a major problem. I get the officiating has been great this series, but you can't win the officiating in the Stanley Cup final. You got to stay out of the box. This Florida team on the power play is dangerous, maybe the most dangerous team in the league on the power play in the Eastern Conference. Edmonton obviously is just pretty much just as dangerous on the power play with McDavid and Draisaitl and all those guys. So, but you have to stay out of the box. You gotta stay disciplined. You know, if you're playing 4-on-5, you know they took 2 early penalties in this game. That's an early 5-on-3 where Matthew Tkachuk ended up scoring in the first period. You know, you can't be, on the outward advantage as much as they have in these last couple of games. You have to stay out of the box. I think if this team stays disciplined, they should win the series. I really do. But if they don't stay out of the box, it's only a matter of time before Florida hangs on to these leads and then put the series away. So those are, I guess, my keys to success for these two teams going forward. Game 5 of the Stanley Cup Final, we will go back. I believe we're going back to Edmonton, actually. Game 5 is going to be Florida, Edmonton, 8 o'clock on TNT. That will be on Saturday, is when Game 5 will be for the Stanley Cup Final. And congratulations to Kenner Hellebuyck, Winnipeg Jets goalie. He won the Vezina Trophy and MVP. He's I think the 5th goalie ever to win both in the same season. The first since Carey Price back in 2015, 10 years ago. We had that crazy good season. Hellebuyck had an amazing year. 47, 12, and 3 for the Western Conference best team in the regular season. 8 shutouts. Goals against average of 2, a 9.25 save percentage. Is a ridiculous season for Connor Hellebuyck. He wins his 3rd Vezina Trophy and wins the Hart Trophy as well. He's clearly the best goalie in the sport, and congratulations to him on just an absolutely incredible season. And last thing to cover in this segment before we're gonna move to the something else. So remember I talked about yesterday how I thought it was so dumb that Aaron Civale was like a fill-in starter for the Brewers. He got moved to the bullpen because they're calling him their top pitching prospect. Jacob Miz, whatever his name is. It's a shame. He pitched 5 hitless innings this year, then he hurt himself, so hopefully he's okay. He got moved to the bullpen, so he requested a trade. Well, one day later, he was traded to the Chicago White Sox. That's what you get. You're on a pretty solid Brewers team that's playing well, has a good chance to make the playoffs this year. Team that's won the division the last few years. So we'll see what happens. It's only June 13th, but playing well. You know, the only reason you're being moved to the bullpen because you haven't pitched well so far, and this is a team that's very deep with their starting pitching. And they have guys in the bullpen in the minor leagues that could, be a 5th star on another team. And now you're on maybe the worst team in the American League, a team that last year was the worst team in MLB history, and isn't much better this year. Congratulations, dude! Congratulations. And what's even better from the Brewers, they get Andrew Vaughn out of it. The first baseman from the White Sox. He has not been good this year. He's only hitting 189 this year. But this is a guy who last year hit 246 with 19 home runs and 70 RBIs. He hit 21 bombs and 80 ribbies the year before. Not a great defender at first or in the outfield. He's definitely a DH, but this is a guy who's still 27 years old, has shown the ability to be a 20-homer threat in the past. That's not a bad piece to get out. I know you have Reese Hoskins at first. He's your first baseman. You have Yelich pretty much as the full-time DH because of the back injuries he's had in the past and the injuries he's had in the past. To want him playing in the field, so you have him DHing, but nothing else. He could be a power bat on your bench to get that. Only 27. The guy was once a top prospect because, I know last year's OPS was only 699, so first career he hasn't quite worked out. However, the White Sox player development system is very, very bad. Bruce is certainly much better. This guy could at least be a really good power bat to have on your bench. So they could get that out of, for a guy who at the time was your 6th starting pitcher and didn't want to be there. That's a pretty good return for the Brewers, and I'm not sure what would even give him up. For Aaron Civale, really? That's why the White Sox are just complete poverty and are a joke of an organization. But Civale to the Chicago White Sox. Brewers get first baseman Andrew Vaughn in return. To finish out today, I'm going to go over my top 32 NFL head coaches going into the 2025 season. Going to rank them 32 through 1. Let's get started. This will be the last thing I cover today. At 32, I have Brian Schottenheimer. He's, of course, a new head coach. He was promoted from the offensive coordinator position by the Dallas Cowboys. This hire made no sense. This guy has been a coordinator in the NFL for like 20 years. He's never been with a team longer than 5 seasons. That was with the Jets from 2006 to 2010. He has not called plays for anybody in like 4 years. He has not called plays for Dallas Cowboys ever. The last 2 years, Mike McCarthy called the plays, even though Schottenheimer was the offensive coordinator. Doesn't make any sense. He's, like I said, he's never been a corner for more than 5 years. Anywhere besides, I think he's never been somewhere for more than 3 or 4 years. The reason that he keeps, jumping around, he's a very, just basically a replacement level coordinator. Now he's a head coach. Never understood why Jerry hired him. My dude, Jerry Jones. That's why he was hired. But Jerry Jones just operates on his own time at this point. But Schottenheimer, I just don't see was ending well. To me, he's the worst coach in the NFL. Obviously, you got to put the rookies last here. We don't exactly know what they're going to be, but I don't see this ending very well. This could be like a draw man situation where, opposed to going out and, growing a set and having the balls to make a big move and go out and get, whether it's Mike Vrabel or Bill Belichick or something like that, you give Brian Schottenheimer a shot, you promote him from within, and he just becomes an absolute disaster, and then he gets fired after the year, and then maybe next year they will have to go and get a big name and spend the money. But, or Jerry Jones also doesn't like firing coaches before their contracts end, so knowing him, he'll keep him for 4 years and they'll win 7 games every year and become just even more powerful than they are. But Schottenheimer is my 32nd ranked coach heading into the season. The 31 is Kellen Moore. I don't really know if Kellen Moore is head coach material. He's not a bad offensive coordinator by any means, but he's worked with a lot of good offense. He had talented offense in Dallas. He's had a very talented offense in Philadelphia, and they'll seem to put up a lot of points. But also with often one of the head coaches standing right next to him in both stints. And this is such a horrible situation too with the New Orleans Saints. They have no quarterback. The roster is really bad. Obviously, they don't have a way to improve it right now. They appear to be the worst team in the NFL. If you ask me, I could see them, having back-to-back like 3-4 win years and him getting fired. That front office is just very, very bad. Ownership there is a joke. So it's just a really bad situation, and I got why they hired him at the time. He was probably the best name out there, but they waited so long. They were the third team to fire their coach out of the 5 or 6 that made changes, and they were by far the last one to fill it. It's not a very good look for the New Orleans Saints, but Kellen Moore comes in at 31. At 30, I have Liam Cohen. Just, the way he treated his exit in Tampa to take this job and just the cringiness from him. Don't really love what I see. Like, he seems to be a pretty good offensive coordinator, but he's also a guy who's bounced around. He was in with the Rams, then he left. He went to Kentucky, then he went to Tampa, then he left and kept going back to Kentucky and Tampa, and then the way he handled things is, I'm not sure if it's another guy. Bright offensive mind, seems like he knows what he's doing when it comes to modern NFL offenses, but not sure if he's head coach material. Again, that's not a great situation in Jacksonville. It's a really bad organization. It's a young team that's, doesn't have a whole lot on the roster. They add a couple of pieces in the draft. Obviously, Travis Hunter moving up to get him with the 2nd pick in the draft. But they don't have a ton there, Trevor Lawrence comes to the most talented quarterback that he's worked with. Lawrence is probably the most talented quarterback he's going to work with the Rams. Forget if he might have still had Jared Goff. I forget. In Tampa, he had Baker Mayfield. Obviously at Kentucky, he worked with, I don't even know who. So Trevor Lawrence is the most talented quarterback that he's going to work with. They have a few playmakers there with Brian Thomas Jr. and Travis Hunter, even Travis Etienne at the running back spot. They draft a couple of backs this year as well. But just it's such a bad organization. The ownership there is very bad. They just brought in a new GM and James Gladstone. He's very, very young. Is he up for this? We're not sure yet, obviously. But he comes in at 30. And again, he's never coached a game, so we don't really know. At 29, I have Aaron Glenn. I think Aaron Glenn is one of the few defensive minds in today's NFL that could make a very good head coach. He seems like a guy who's very disciplined and just a hard-nosed coach, a guy who players really, really like. Very few players speak as highly as a coordinator. I've seen Lions players speak of Aaron Glenn. Obviously, as a former Jets player back in the day, was a very good defensive back. Former Jets years ago. Seems like And he's handled the media very well so far. The players seem to like him. Like I mentioned, he's a player's guy, but just again, terrible situation, horrible ownership, horrible organization. Just have some young pieces on both sides of the ball, but still have a very messy quarterback situation. And again, there's just such a bad organization. And they've been trying to hire defensive coordinators for 20, 25 years. It has not worked out. Not sure whether they keep going down that road. Hard to see if it's really working out, to be honest. But and again, you can't really have him much higher because he's a first-time head coach. But as for my confidence level, I wish as a Jeff fan I would have a little more confidence level in this. I don't think working out, but I really don't. So 29, where he comes in. 28 is Ben Johnson. Again, first-time head coach. We don't really know. I think he's a brilliant offensive mind. I think he's a very smart guy. Seems like the players like him a lot. He's not the best person but seems like that guy the players like a lot. He was close with Dan Campbell. But again, I'm not sure, how much, I guess from an NFL perspective why you'd think he could benefit Caleb Williams. I don't know from a personality perspective if it's the right fit, to be honest. And there's another guy, I think makes a great offensive coordinator. He's an incredible play caller. He's a really smart guy. Seems like a decent dude. But when it comes to managing, all 53 guys and the staff and working with the front office, I'm not sure if he's capable of doing that. Wasn't as high as a lot of other people, especially Bears fans. God, they love that hire. But Ben Johnson comes in at 28. And now we're away from the first-time head coaches. Now we have something to actually go off of with these next bunch of guys. Number 27 is Brian Callahan. I was very concerned for what I saw last year. That team was not very good. Will Levis is god-awful. I've been saying it since his Kentucky days. This guy is not that guy. The reason he fell in the second round in last year's draft, or the draft 2 years ago, rather. But Callahan almost seemed like he lacked a lot of confidence. They weren't even really competitive. Obviously, you only win 3 games. And we're the worst team in the league. You draft Cam Ward. I said when they hired him, I don't think he's head coach material. Bright offensive mind, seems like a good guy. Seems like he tries to disappoint his players. You could see he was definitely frustrated with some of the really bad turnovers that Will Levis had last year. But just at times seems like he lacked confidence. You can't do as a head coach in this league. He's a guy I could see improving. They've invested a lot of draft capital in the offensive side of the ball. They've invested money in the running back position with Tony Pollard, a receiver of Calvin Ridley. So maybe if Cam Moore can go out there and get them something in his rookie season, it looks a little better. But he's a guy that, as bad as the team was, he didn't do them any favors. At 26, I have Raheem Morris. I didn't understand why he was even hired. He was god-awful his first time around as a head coach with the 49ers years ago. He did a pretty decent job as the defensive coordinator for a while, actually in Atlanta, and then definitely even more so with the Rams for taking his job. But this guy, he's horrible. His game management is as bad as I've seen in a while. It's very, very bad. His decision-making is bad. This guy is a bad head coach. I think if Atlanta had a better head coach, they had even a middle-of-the-road guy like a Nick Sirianni or a Sean McDermott. If Sean McDermott was the coach of the Falcons last year, even with, Kirk Cousins falling apart down the stretch and going to Michael Penix, that whole situation, I think they would have at least gotten past Tampa and won that division, at the very least. He's a terrible head coach. I don't expect him to be there much longer, to be honest. But he's at 26. The head coach in the NFL is not what it once was. Same thing with the quarterback play. 25 is Mike McDaniel. I don't understand how this guy keeps surviving. How they even thought to keep him after last year is beyond me. I get Tua is always hurt, and he's got a very limited ceiling. But this guy's game management, as bad as Raheem Morris is, his somehow might be worse. It's god-awful. I think he's a terrible head coach. And I get he's funny in the press conferences, and he seems like a really good guy to hang out with. But as an NFL head coach, you want to be somewhat approachable for your players. But at the end of the day, you're there to coach them and get the best out of them and win a championship, not to, be their drinking buddy. And I think as great of a guy and funny as a guy that he is, I don't think he's a head coach in this league. I would take him as an offensive coordinator pretty much any day of the week and twice on Sunday, but not a head coach. He's terrible. How he's lasted, 5 years is kind of a miracle. I'd be shocked if he's the head coach by the end of the season. This should probably be his last year in Miami. It should be at least. McDaniel comes in at 25. At 24, I have Shane Steichen. Seguin's another guy, bright offensive mind. Thought he did some good things in his first year, losing Anthony Richardson that early and having to make the pivot, to a quarterback in Gardner Minshew, who is a completely different quarterback than Anthony Richardson. Richardson's a guy who's got a cannon, great athlete, runs a lot, but is not accurate, obviously very raw coming out of college. Minshew's a guy who's also a lot more polished, guy who's been in the league a lot longer, but, is basically the complete opposite. He's much more accurate, but doesn't have a big arm. He's not going to commit as many turnovers, not as mobile, which is a complete difference in the fact that he was able to keep the team competitive. They lose that win or go home game against the Texans. If that guy caught that ball, that wasn't a good call from Steichen. If that catches that ball, they may have won that division instead of the Texans 2 years ago. This last year, just the development of Anthony Richardson, that's a part of that. A lot of that's on Chris Ballard, but definitely a lot falls on him, and just the fact that the team just looked lifeless at times last year, and just I don't really think he's great. He hasn't done a good enough job. I thought they would let him go after last year. They didn't. Now, if Chris Ballard's getting really hot, obviously, and the unfortunate passing of the young Jim Irsay, his family is taking over. There's all signs point to this being his last year, but he does something really special, but it's hard to see that happening. If that roster and their quarterback room being Daniel Jones and Anthony Richardson. So, he's at 24. At 23 is Todd Bowles. This guy is terrible. His game management is terrible. His clock management's terrible. This guy's horrible. He's lucky that the Bucs have a pretty solid roster, and they're in a god-awful division, and they were able to squeeze 9-10 wins every year and steal the division. And then unless they get really lucky that they did 2 years ago, got that Eagles team that just collapsed, you're going to lose in the first round every year. He's not a good head coach. He did the same thing with the Jets. He's doing the same thing in Tampa. He's as lucky as he gets in this league. He's not very good. I think they need to move on. They're winning 9-10 games in the division every year, and that's what fans are happy with. It's enough for them. But at some point, they're like, all right, this division is bad at Atlanta, depending on what happens with Michael Penix. If Penix is really good, Falcons could control the division. If not, that's a really messy situation. Carolina is still probably a year or two away. The Saints are a joke. Tampa, they've ran this division for the last 4 or 5 years. They can continue to do it for a few more. But at some point, they got to be more than a team that's lucky they're in a bad division and then gets clotheslined in the first round. They got to be better. At 22, I have Brian Daboll. Look, I get he's only a few years removed from winning Coach of the Year, taking the Giants to the playoffs, winning a road playoff game. And, he has not had very good rosters. He's had, Daniel Jones as his quarterback, hasn't got to pick his own quarterback. He's a guy who did a lot of good things as an offensive coordinator with the Buffalo Bills before his Giants head coach tenure. I like the hire at the time. But I don't think he's a very good head coach, to be honest. Now, his game management could use work. The play calling has been a little bit questionable. He seems like he's lost the locker room 2 years in a row rather easily. He always seems frustrated on the sideline. And again, I'd be a little frustrated too if I was the Giants head coach for the last couple of years. But he doesn't even really talk to players on the sideline. Seems like the players don't really like him, and it's hard to see him as really ending well. And also, he's in a position now, unless he really has this team competing, which I see being doubtful as good as that defense is. The offense is still really bad. He's gonna get axed, and just the fans have turned on him, and just look. I like Daboll as a guy. I think he's a smart guy, but as a head coach, he just hasn't gotten it done to me. So he's 22. 21, I have Dave Canales. I was considering putting Canales below Daboll. I could see why you want to do that. Daboll does have a playoff win under his belt. Canales obviously doesn't. He's only been there the 1 year. However, I thought Canales actually did a very good job last year. He came into a pretty disastrous situation with a bad organization. He said right away after those first 2 games, they looked even worse than they were the year before. Like, we're benching Bryce Young. He said, I don't care what this guy's draft pick was, what he's making. We're going to Andy Dalton. He puts him in, where it was able to, gain control of that locker that was kind of falling apart. He gives Bryce a second chance, and it worked out really well for them. They were really competitive down the stretch last year. I think that he did a really good job in what was not a great situation. I think this is a guy who at that time, I was like, that's probably the best you're going to do, considering how bad that job was. But, I'm not sure if this is the right guy for the job. But so far, I think he's done a good job. I think he's done the best that anybody could with that situation. I think he's got the potential to be a good head coach in this league, so I'll go with I have him at 21. obviously only 1 year. They still only won, 5 or 6 games. You still need to see more, obviously, but I think that he has them trending in the right direction for the first time in a bunch of years. At 20, I have Jonathan Gannon. Look, I think Kyler is vastly overrated. I don't think he's a great quarterback by any means. I think he's at best an average starter in this league. So they do have a limited ceiling of him as their quarterback, and the roster does need some work. It's still kind of young and developing. At the same time, he's been there for 3 years now. They have not made the playoffs. If he has another year without missing they missed the playoffs, it's gonna be a little concerning. Didn't love the hire at the time. He seems just comes off as very cringe and just not really a true leader, not really a leader of men. So I never thought he was quite head coach material. But at first I thought that first year when he kept them in a lot of games, I thought he did a good job. These last years we've been kind of waiting for him to take the job. It hasn't happened. I don't see it happening this year. If it doesn't, he probably gets canned. That's going to be a little bit hard to defend. Maybe you see a guy miss the playoffs 3-4 years in a row. A lot of times it's like, all right, we got to make a change. But I have him at 20. I don't think he's horrible. I also don't think he's great. Maybe in a better situation, he could have maybe had a team in the playoffs consistently. But again, results are results, and he hasn't had them yet. At 19, I have Mike McDonald. I think he did a solid job last year with Seattle. That was a team. That was basically the same team the year prior when they won 8 or 9 games under Carroll in their last year, and he won 9 games last year. What do you think? He barely snuck in. So overall, I like the hire. When it happened, he was the Ravens' defensive coordinator. He's a good defensive mind. We'll see what happens with all the moving pieces. You go from Geno to Sam Darnold at quarterback. You go from DK Metcalf and Tyler Lockett to obviously bringing Cooper Kupp and JSN's taking the elevator role at the receiver spot. Seeing if he's got a lot of these guys stay healthy. But we'll see what happens. Overall, though, he did a decent job last year, but only 1 year. We'll see what he does in year 2. I have him at 19. At 18, I have Zach Taylor. I thought about putting him lower, but you look at all these guys. Really, the most accomplished of any of the guys I have below him is Brian Dable, and who has 1 playoff in 3 years. Zach Taylor does have a Super Bowl berth under his belt. He had a really, really good roster that year, and it was a few years ago. But that's all he has. I think he's a mediocre coach. If the Bengals didn't get hot down the stretch last year, he would have gotten fired for sure. He started off 4-8. I thought this guy's gonna get canned if he even lasts a year. But then obviously you win the last 5 games and unfortunately don't get the help you need, so it does save his job. But this year you gotta at least win a playoff game this year. Even if they make the playoffs and they go 1 and done, I guess the division is competitive. The Baltimore Ravens are still really good. Pittsburgh, I'm sure, will at least be competitive, even with an ancient Aaron Rodgers. But then Cleveland's not gonna be good, obviously. But you gotta at least win a playoff game, I think, for him to keep his job. When you have as much talent as you do on that offense as an offensive guy, there has to be results. I get that defense is very, very, very bad, but and that organization is just clueless right now with how they're handling Trey Henderson and Shamar Stewart. It's a joke, but Zach Taylor, he's definitely on something nice, as a lot of guys are. 17, I have Dan Quinn. I was not a fan of the hire when it happened last year, but I've been proven wrong thus far. He did a great job last year. Obviously, had him in the NFC Championship. I think a lot of that credit does belong to Jaden Daniels. Some of the other young guys, but he did a good job. He seems like the right guy for the job right now. This is kind of starting off similar how his Atlanta tenure started off. His first year, took over a team that had been bad for a while. And then the first year, they improved. In the second year, they got a little Super Bowl. Obviously, he lost 28-3, and it was kind of from there. So Washington first year, takes him that was garbage for a long time, takes him to the NFC Championship, so he has to do it again for sure. But right now, overall, he did a good job. However, it was only 1 year. His last tenure as a head coach overall wasn't great. So we'll see what happens. But Dan Quinn is at 17. At 16, I have Sean McDermott. For me, he's right splat down in the middle. He's about an average coach in the league. Every year, the Bills come in 11, 12 games. He gets them, into the playoffs. Hasn't gone on a deep run, but they haven't get past the Chiefs yet. He's also got, the MVP of the league and Josh Allen there. He has a very good team. At times, his game manager hasn't been great. It was a little bit better last year than in past years, but This is still a guy who, at some point, he's got to beat the Chiefs and get to the Super Bowl with Josh Allen. He hasn't been able to do it yet, so I have him at 16 for now. At 15, I have Nick Sirianni. Now, if you watch the show, I've bashed this guy a lot. I do not think he's a very good X's and O's guy. But I do think he is a really good true leader. I get, he's comes off a little arrogant. But first of all, considering he's coaching in Philadelphia, that actually works really well. And the guy wins. He's been to the Super Bowl. He's been with this team for 4 years. He's been to the Super Bowl twice, and he's won one. In 4 years, he's won a lot of games. That's what it's about. He gets results. I get that. That team is incredible. A lot of coaches would be able to accomplish similar feats with this roster. But at the end of the day, Sirianni's gotten the job done. He did a good job fixing his staff last year. Kellen Moore is not coming back, so we'll see. We'll see what happens. But Vic Fangio's coming back on the arrow side of the ball. So not a great X's and O's guy, but he's I think overall a good leader and a good motivator. So I'll put him at 15. At 14, I have Kyle Shanahan. Now, I'm not sure if this is like vastly too high or vastly too low for him compared to what other people have, but this is my take on Kyle Shanahan. Very smart guy. Obviously comes from a great family with his dad being Mike Shanahan, obviously. I think is a really bright offensive mind. I like his scheme offensively. It's very easy to learn for a young quarterback. They put up a lot of points in it. However, at some point, this guy has to win the big one. How many double-digit leads has this guy blown in the playoffs? As not only a coordinator in Atlanta, but as a head coach in San Fran. He's been here for what? This is what his 7th, 8th, 9th year there. And they've, with this as loaded as a roster you could get, he's now been to win a Super Bowl. And now they appear to have missed their window. If they're held this year, they may have a shot, but I don't think they're, somewhat the team to beat, obviously. But he's just blowing so many leads. He even blew some leads in the regular season last year, and I think he's overall a good coach and a smart guy. But at the same time, this guy's got to stop blowing leads, and he got that choke job label on him. Only to shed it is to win a Super Bowl, and I'm not sure if that's going to happen considering all the contracts the Niners have on their books. So I have him at 14. At 13, I have Kevin Stefanski. I feel bad for this guy. I think Stefanski's a very good coach in this league. It's such a horrible situation with the Deshaun Watson stuff and just how bad the roster is now. And if I were him, I would just quit, honestly. I'd be like, I don't care. At some point, I'll get another job. Even if I have to be coordinator for a year or two, I'll get a job as a coach somewhere at some point in the next couple of years. But I don't put a lot of that situation on him. I get it. One playoff win in 5 years is not ideal. But just the situation is so bad with Deshaun Watson that is on the front office for sure. That this god-awful front office and that god-awful ownership group in Cleveland. It's also a very bad organization. And now with just a makeshift quarterback room and the pretty poor roster and just everything going on, he's in a really horrible spot. But overall, I think he's a very good coach in this league. There's a reason that he's been coach of the year, I think, twice in 5 or 6 years there. So I got Stefanski at 13. At 12, I have Pete Carroll. Look, I've been high on Pete Carroll for a long time. I think he's always been a really good coach. His tenure in Seattle was very, very strong. Was there for a long time. Had a winning season. I think all but 2 years there. Was in the playoffs. All but 3 or 4 years. Was there for 12 or 13 years. Won a Super Bowl. Almost had a second. But he hasn't had more than he's only had 1 or 2 playoff wins since that Super Bowl loss in 2015. You missed the playoffs his last year. He hasn't coached in a couple of years. I mean, it was only 2 years ago, but the guy's also very old. However, I think he's a good guy to get the Raiders back on track. He's overall a really good coach. And if he wins another Super Bowl, you'll have to put him in the Hall of Fame. Right now, he probably isn't in the Hall of Fame, but you can make the argument. I think at the end of the day, he's overall a very good coach. I'm not sure if he's a great coach, especially at his age, but I think he's a very good coach. Get that the players really like, good leader. You see him, this guy's 7 years old. He's putting on gloves and he's going out there catching passes. You gotta love it. He clearly loves the game, and I'm happy he got another opportunity. And but right now I have him at 12. I'm not sure if he can take a team to the Super Bowl at this point in his coaching career. But overall, very good coach. At 11, I have Matt LaFleur. So I've done my fair share of complimenting him and bashing him on this show. Overall, when the dust settles, I think he's a very good coach. He's done a good job. He's won a lot of games with his team. He was in three straight NFC title games with Aaron Rodgers, or like two straight. He won a lot of games with him. A lot of that, I think, was Aaron Rodgers not getting it done in the playoffs. Obviously, he had that very bad decision to kick that field goal on that 4th and goal against Tampa a couple of years ago. That, I think, was on him for sure. But we've done a good job these last couple of years. With Jordan Love getting to the playoffs, it's definitely time to take a step forward. But overall, I think he's done a good job, and he's a good coach. At 10, I have Mike Tomlin. So I'm not sure if this seems really, really low for him or not, but Tomlin's had a great tenure, but he's become overrated over time to me. It does not matter who the quarterbacks are. The guy's going to win 9 or 10 games, get you to the playoffs, and he'll get slapped in the first round. A change is needed in Pittsburgh. I get he's had, 16 or 17 straight winning seasons. It is impressive, but it's time to move on. He's a very good coach, probably a Hall of Fame coach, but he's overstayed his welcome. So he's become a little bit overrated, but I still have him at 10. At 9, I have D'Amico Ryans. I think Ryans is a great coach. He's come in there and taken just a lifeless organization. He's taken them to back-to-back division titles in the not good division, won 2 playoff games. Although last year, they won the same amount of games. It wasn't the same team. If you watch the games, they still were able to win a playoff game. We're pretty close in that Chiefs game. If they got a couple of calls in that game that they didn't get, things could have been different and at least been a little more dicey. I think this guy is a really good coach, one of the best young coaches in the league, and I have him at 9. At 8, I have Sean Payton. If you've watched this show, I don't like Sean Payton by any means. I'm not a fan. However, he's a great coach. He's come in his first year in Denver. He did had them improve. Last year, taking a team with a rookie Bo Nix, and a roster that'll be questioned a lot on paper to the playoffs, was very impressive. Colin Cowherd made a comparison comparing him to Gordon Ramsay, although I think Cowherd is a clown and very cringe and doesn't really know what he's talking about. That's actually, as I know his comparisons are really just goofy and cringy. That one is actually makes a lot of sense. He said, he's gonna be very aggressive. He's not gonna make a lot of friends. He's gonna make more enemies than friends. He might make some people cry, actually. And it's going to be really aggravating to work with at times, but he'll clean up your kitchen, and he'll get the job done. Sean Payton's going to come in. He's going to make a few people kind of, not sure if I like this guy's attitude. He's not going to be the easy guy to work with at times. However, if you want to win, if you want to be great and win a championship, there are very few guys that are better than Sean Payton to do that. So Sean Payton, I have at 8. 7, I have John Harbaugh. Now, I could have put him a little higher, but he has not had a ton of playoff success recently. Outside of going to the AFC Championship 2 years ago, he only has a couple of playoff wins since they won the Super Bowl. That was back in 2012? That was 13 years ago. Since then, hasn't had a ton of playoff success. However, every year the team is competitive, has them in the playoff picture. Last couple of years, they've been in the championship picture-ish the last couple of years. This guy's a really good coach. Seems like a really good guy to play for. He gets results for the most part. At some point, you want to see him try and get another Super Bowl ring. Well, a lot of that, I think, he's in Lamar Jackson. He's not risen to the occasion in the postseason quite yet, but I like John Harbaugh. I think he's the right coach for that team. He's a great coach, and I have him at 7. At 6, I have Mike Vrabel. Vrabel, I was considering, do I put him a little higher, put him a little lower? Overall, I think he's a really good coach. I think a lot of stuff in Tennessee wasn't his fault. They did not give him great rosters. I got he had Derrick Henry, so he can kind of just, say, all right, Henry, 30 carries, boom, go. And, and they'll work my magic on defense. He's got pieces on defense. We'll be able to win enough games to make the playoffs, but I get it. Ever since the AFC Championship where Derrick Henry kind of ran them to that one, not a lot of playoff success, but, the situation in Tennessee wasn't great. The ownership there is really bad. I think he's in a better situation in New England. The guy's a really good coach, leader of men, great leader. Overall, I think a really good coach. He's got balls, but not too, but not to the point where it's like a Dan Campbell time where he's stupid. But Mike Vrabel, I think, is a really good coach. Didn't coach last year, so I was going to put him a little higher. I'm very, very high on this guy, but I'll put him at 6 for now. But if he takes his Patriots team to the playoffs, he'll be even higher. At 5, I have Kevin O'Connell. This guy's a really good coach. When it comes to play design, he's probably number 1 in the league, maybe besides Andy Reid and Sean McVay. Excellent play caller. This amazing offensive mind. This is a really smart guy. He's a great coach. He took, a Vikings team that, had so many issues right before the season. You go into the year of Sam Darnold as your quarterback, and he completely revives the guy's career. I'm excited to see what he does with J.J. McCarthy. Your first rounder last year was hurt all last year, obviously. This guy's a really good coach. I have him at 5. At 4, I have Jim Harbaugh. Not sure if it's too high for Harbaugh, but this is a guy who's simply winner. He's won everywhere he's been. Took a Chargers team that on paper was probably worse than the 5-win team you saw the year before, and he had them in the playoffs. The guy's a great coach. Really bright guy. Great leader, great motivator. Hard to get better than this. I think the right coach of this team, and Jim Harbaugh, I have him at 4. At 3, I have Dan Campbell. How can you not love this guy? I would love to play with this guy because this is a guy he's gonna hold you accountable. He's gonna be a guy. I'm sure those practices are pretty tough, but he's also gonna be a guy. He's always gonna have your back with the media. He'll hold you accountable to the point where okay, I gotta be better. This is what I gotta do to be successful. However, he's clearly doing it because he wants to win so bad. He wants you to succeed. He's a great guy. He seems like an awesome guy to be around. He's, to me, the perfect NFL head coach in today's NFL. Obviously, it's, hasn't been to get to the Super Bowl. He did make some poor decisions 2 years ago in the conference championship. Last year, losing in the second round, they couldn't stop anybody. It's concerning. But he had so many injuries on defense. This guy has become a really, really good coach. He's worked really, really hard to turn his Lions franchise around. I think he deserves a lot of credit. I'm interested to see now with Ben Johnson not standing next to him. Campbell's never been a great play caller. He's more of a motivator, obviously, but I'm interested to see how it plays out. But to this point, he's done as good of a job as he possibly has, as he could have done. At 2, I have Sean McVay. This guy is one of the greatest play designers I've ever seen. One of the smartest offensive mind I think the league's ever seen. When it comes to modern day coaches, he's got a resume as good as pretty much anybody. Obviously has a ring under his belt. No matter what the changes that the Rams have gone through, for the most part, he's had them competitive. He's had them in the playoffs. This is a guy who seems like a great guy to be around. Obviously, still is really young. Nick Vay is an amazing coach. I have him at 2. Now, 1, I have Andy Reid. Just when it comes to play design, there are very few coaches ever who are better than Andy Reid. He has 3 Super Bowl rings. He's been to the Super Bowl like 6 or 7 times. The guy he gets results. Obviously, he's got Pat Mahomes, but still, the guy gets results. Seems like a great guy to be around. Who's going to hold you accountable. Again, hard to not love this guy. One of the greatest coaches of all time. Andy Reid, to me, is still the best coach in the NFL. That's all I got for you guys today. Until next time, so long, and have a great day.